The line between our online lives and the real world is thinner than it has ever been. Our houses listen, our cameras watch, and almost everything we do leaves a digital trail. You would think that would make us safer. It has done the opposite for some people. The stories you are about to hear were all submitted to me this year by viewers who swear that what happened to them was real. They are about ordinary jobs, ordinary houses, and ordinary nights that went violently wrong. Some of them involve technology failing in ways that should be impossible. Others could have happened in any decade. What links them is that they never got a clean answer, never got justice, and never really went back to feeling normal again. Listen to them in the dark if you want, but do not make the mistake of assuming you could never end up in one of these situations. That is exactly what they thought, right up until the moment everything changed. Story 1 happened to a woman named Lila who moved into a brand new smart apartment complex in January. Everything in the place was controlled through an app, from the lights to the locks. The building even had an AI intercom that could recognize residents by voice and open the lobby door when you spoke your name. Lila thought it was cool, at first. The first week went fine. The second week, she came home late from a shift, and as she walked up the path, the lobby lights came on by themselves. That was normal. What was not normal was hearing her own voice come from the speaker by the door. It said her full name in the exact tone she used when she was tired and annoyed. Then the AI voice chimed in and said, "Access granted, welcome home," and the lock clicked open. She froze because she had not said anything. When she checked the app later, the log claimed her voice had been verified from the sidewalk mic. She wrote it off as a glitch until it kept happening. Some nights, she would be halfway down the block and hear herself already speaking at the door. One night she stopped on the corner, pulled out her phone, and started recording video before she even approached the building. She watched in real time as the lobby lights turned on, as the little green ring around the mic lit up, and as her own tired voice came out of the speaker, asking to be let in. She stayed across the street and watched the glass door swing open on its own. Someone had already come inside using her voice, and whoever it was, the system thought they were her. Story 2 comes from a rideshare driver outside Phoenix who switched to full-time driving at the start of the year. He drove a newer car with lane assist and a basic autopilot that could manage highways on its own. One Friday in March, just after midnight, he got a ping for a premium ride that paid almost triple the usual rate. The pickup location was on the edge of the city, near a new subdivision that was still half under construction. The passenger name was simply listed as shared account. That was unusual, but not unheard of, so he accepted. When he got close, the app chimed and asked if he wanted to let the car handle the final stretch because the streets were newly mapped. He hit yes, more out of curiosity than anything. The wheel turned itself onto a side road with no streetlights and kept going, farther than the blue pickup pin on his screen. He tapped the wheel to cancel autopilot, but the system only flashed a brief warning that manual control was temporarily unavailable while recalibrating. The car rolled deeper into the dark, past houses with no lights, and empty lots filled with rebar and concrete forms. His phone buzzed again. A text, not from the app, but from an unknown number. It said, "Do not get out when the car stops. Lock your doors. Reverse hard." Before he could process that, the navigation announced he had arrived and eased to a stop beside a half-built two-story, its windows just holes cut in plywood. In the unfinished doorway, 3 silhouettes were already walking toward the car, coming from a place the map said was still empty ground. Story 3 was sent in by a guy who works fully remote for a tech company. He lives alone in a small townhouse and spends most days in video calls with his team. He almost never turned his camera on, but after a policy change this spring, everyone was required to keep cameras enabled during meetings. He hated it, but complied, using one of those blurred backgrounds the app provides. One Tuesday afternoon, he was in a planning call with 8 other people. He was half listening, half scrolling his phone, when his manager suddenly stopped mid-sentence and frowned at him. Then one coworker unmuted and asked, "Hey, is someone in your house?" He said no without thinking. He had not heard anyone come in, and his front door was still locked. Another voice said, "Your blur just dropped for a second. There was somebody standing behind you." He laughed it off and blamed a glitch. The call moved on, but he could feel people avoiding looking at his tile. That night, he opened the auto recording of the meeting. For almost the entire call, his background was just a soft blur. But at 13 minutes in, For exactly a fraction of a second, the blur snapped into perfect focus. He scrubbed through frame by frame until he saw it. In one frame, a tall figure in dark clothing stood right behind his chair, head bent close to his ear, still. In the next frame, the blur returned, and the figure was gone. Story 4 came from a guy who works night shifts for a startup that sells smart perimeter cameras to wealthy homeowners. He isn't a field tech. He's one of the people who sits in front of a wall of monitors in a cheap office park, reviewing flagged clips the AI marked as potential human threat. 99% of it is windblown branches, raccoons wandering into yards, or delivery drivers. In late February, one of the beta testers was a massive modern house about 30 minutes outside Seattle, perched alone on a hill with glass walls facing the forest. The system started flagging that house more than any other. At first it was just false positives. But then one night, well after 3 a.m., a clip popped up flagged unidentified person on property, interior. That was weird because his company didn't do interior monitoring, only outdoor cameras. The feed ID matched the house on the hill. When he opened the video, his stomach dropped. The view was from high in a corner of what looked like a living room. The house was dark except for the glow of a giant TV and some subtle under-cabinet lights in the kitchen. In the dead center of the room was an armchair, and in that armchair was a man, sitting completely still, facing away from the camera. The timestamp said the footage was live, but the client's account settings claimed there were no indoor cameras installed, just 8 exterior units. As he watched, the man in the chair slowly turned his head as if he'd heard something. Then, instead of looking toward the TV or toward the hallway, his head tilted all the way up until he was staring directly into the corner where the camera had to be. Story 5 is about 2 college roommates in their early 20s who lived off campus in a tiny apartment above a closed-down hair salon. To save money, they shared just about everything: passwords, grocery lists, even a family location sharing plan. On a Thursday night in April, one of them stayed late at the library to cram for finals. The other texted around 10 that she was exhausted and going to bed. About an hour later, the girl at the library looked at her phone and saw a notification: "Emily has arrived home." That was normal, but right under it, a second ping flashed: "You have arrived home." She was still very much at the library. She dismissed it as a GPS glitch until a third ping came in: "Emily is no longer at home." The icon on the map showed her roommates drifting slowly up and down the hallway of their building, then going still directly in front of their apartment door. When the girl tried to call, it rang once and cut off. She grabbed her things and ordered a rideshare back. Halfway there, she opened the app again. Both of their icons were now inside the apartment. She texted, "I'm 5 minutes out. Did you but dial me?" No answer. When she finally got to the building and ran up the stairs, the lights in their apartment were all off. But through the cheap door, she could see the thin line of their smart bulb in the living room glowing a faint, pulsing red, the privacy setting they never used. The app still said both of them were inside. Story 6 was sent by a retired cop who took a part-time job as an overnight security guard at a huge self-storage facility outside Dallas. The place had gone fully digital in 2025. No human on-site except him. Every unit controlled by app-based smart locks and monitored by motion sensors. His usual routine was walking the corridors, listening to podcasts, occasionally checking a triggered unit on his tablet. One humid night in June, multiple doors in the back row of Building C registered as opened within seconds of each other. The system flashed an alert that the units had been remotely accessed by their verified owners. It was 3 in the morning on a Tuesday. He walked out to see, expecting to see a moving truck or a panicked tenant. The lot was empty. Inside the corridor, the overhead lights were on motion saver dim. The metal doors of units C18 through C24 were all rolled up about 2 feet, just enough for someone to crawl under. There were no sounds, no voices, no cars pulling away. He radioed it in and knelt to lift one door higher to check for someone hiding inside. Before he could touch it, the lock on the unit next to him clicked by itself and the door rattled as if something had just let go from the other side. Then, one by one, all the open doors in that row slowly rolled down in sequence, slamming shut at the exact same speed. Story 7 happened to a woman in her 30s named Anna who lost her husband in a hit and run 2 years ago. Since then, she had become extra careful with money. In May of this year, she got a call, while making dinner from a number that matched her bank's official caller ID. The man on the line sounded professional, said there had been suspicious activity and they needed to verify a large outgoing transfer. She was about to hang up and call the bank back herself when the man said, without being prompted, "Anna, please don't hang up. I know this feels scary, but I'm looking at your file right now and I see you've already had one horrible surprise in your life." Then he mentioned the exact date her husband died. Her blood ran cold. She demanded to know how he had that info. He apologized and said sometimes the system surfaces sensitive markers, and he shouldn't have said that aloud. Against her better judgment, she stayed on. He asked if anyone else had access to her phone. She said no, that she lived alone. The man paused and then said, "That's what your profile says too, but our risk model is flagging another adult presence in your home this week between 1 and 4 a.m. She thought maybe he meant someone using her Wi-Fi. Then he asked, very quietly, "Did your husband ever call you from an unknown number after he passed?" Before she could shout at him, the line clicked and a new voice slid into her ear. It was her husband's voice, down to the little hitch he had when he laughed. It said her nickname, twice, the same way he used to wake her up. Then the call dropped on its own. Story 8 came from a nurse in a Midwestern hospital who worked the overnight heart monitor station. Her job was to sit in a dark room and watch dozens of EKG screens, calling floors if someone started crashing. In January, the hospital updated the software with a predictive feature that was supposed to flag rhythms before they went bad. One night around 4 in the morning, every single monitor on her console flashed the same red banner at once. Incoming code event. Different names, different rooms, but the same warning and a 10-second countdown ticking down in the corner of each tile. She thought it was a drill nobody had told her about, until the counters hit 0 and the screens didn't show patience coding. Instead, a new 13th tile faded between the others. No name, no room number, just a single green line, perfectly flat. After about 30 seconds, a label slid over it. Her full name and employee ID. Then the overhead speaker in the monitoring room began to scream a code blue alarm that wasn't sounding anywhere else on the floor. Story 9 was submitted by a transfer student who found a cheap bedroom through a roommate finder app near his new campus on the East Coast. The house was old but clean, and the only rule in the listing was that tenants had to be comfortable with routine inspections because the landlord lived overseas and used a contracted service. Within a week, he noticed that every few nights, usually around 2:30 in the morning, a tiny red would appear high on his wall, hover for a few seconds like a laser pointer, then vanish. He wrote it off as some bored neighbor. Then one night, wide awake scrolling his phone, he heard his doorknob turn very slowly, then click back like someone had gently tested the lock. The hallway was empty when he checked. The next morning, he got an email from the app. An inspection had been completed at 2:33 a.m., with 14 photos attached. The last one was his own face, shot from directly above his bed while he slept. Story 10 is from a woman who thought she'd lucked out getting a unit in a smart building after months on a waiting list. Management bragged about biometric entry, adaptive lighting, and a security system that learned your routine. The hall lights rose softly when she opened her door, and the elevator seemed to be waiting. Then she noticed the system was anticipating her even when she changed her schedule. The kitchen lights snapped on a second before she walked in. The bathroom fan started before she flipped the switch. One hot night in summer, she stayed at her sister's place in town. Just before midnight, her phone buzzed with a notification. "We've detected a disruption in your pattern. Simulate presence." Beneath it were hallway camera stills, her apartment door open wider in each frame, as if someone inside kept checking whether she was coming home.